Introducing our featured guest, the extraordinary sibling of the legendary Neil Young, where music meets the fairways and creativity knows no bounds. Join us as we delve into the captivating life of this remarkable individual, exploring the fascinating realms of golf, childhood memories, literary pursuits, extraterrestrial encounters, and beyond. Get ready to be enthralled by a conversation that transcends conventional boundaries and ignites your imagination. Don't miss out on this captivating journey with our special guest as we unravel the mysteries of his unique experiences and dive into the depths of their extraordinary mind. Get ready to tee off into the world of wonder and inspiration. Welcome to Empowering Time Markers, the podcast where we share inspiring stories, empower listeners with business tips, and create connections. I'm your host, Tia Bottom, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on this journey of growth and empowerment. Our guest today is an author and a golf pro that studies mindset and quantum physics. Growing up in a household full of writers, he started taking notes, which led him to writing a book on golf. Please welcome Bob Young. Hi, Bob.
Thank you.
Please tell me your story today.
The story about has to do with the book that I published. It has to do with golf. It has to do with a lot of things that have to do with the mental side of the equation, which is what you're referring to with quantum physics. It has a lot to do with a lot of things. Frankly, the process came to me as I got better and better. It dawned on me that the mental activity, the formation of the image of the shot, to be exact, so that the physical motion delivered the golf ball in the right direction. Gradually, the golf ball would start going more in the right direction, and certain things would come to my mind that made that work over a period of several years, especially in the late 1970s, early 80s in Florida in the winter and in the summer. Those same years, fellow Mo Norman and I hit hundreds of thousands of golf balls together over the course of many years. But we'd get together and hit 250 or 300 balls each every morning. And then we'd go and hit little chip shots and putts at our friend's golf course late in the afternoon, play 9 holes and play 3 or 4 balls a hole. This went on for months. People from the PGA Tour would occasionally show up and watch Mo hit balls, and we'd talk, and it was interesting. That's what I was doing. It was a way of life is what it really was. And what came out of it, I was surprised by some of it myself because of what happened. I figured out a lot of what I knew by 40 years ago. And around 2001 or 2002, a year before Mo Norman passed away, I realized something else, which he and I discussed, that had to do with a refinement of the mental side of the equation. I explained what I was thinking to him. It was very simple, and it worked very quickly. I knew it would work, and it was something that I had never thought of that way before, and I told him that. He went off and did something. He came back and said, I got to show you this. And it was an exhibition of ball striking superior to anything I had ever seen him do. He hit the ball in a straight line all the time. This particular day, he was able to hit the ball and call the shots with any trajectory that he wanted to. He could always hit it on any trajectory, but shots that went left to right, shots that went right to left, high, low, whatever he wanted to do. And he looked at me and said, it's never been easier. You're not wrong. You just never thought of it this way. And it was something very simple. Actually, in response to a question by Jimmy Merck, associated with Brigetta Tarmarcio, the publicist working on my book production, he plays golf and shoots in the low 90s. And I said, try this. When you get out in the golf course, when you're standing in the fairway or the tee, look at precisely where you want the ball to wind up. Exactly, not generally in the middle of the fairway, where in the middle of the fairway. When you're hitting it at the green, pick out an exact place on the green where you want the ball to wind up. And then look up in the air and you'll sense where it has to begin its descent. That's the apex of the flight. And then balance yourself for the apex fall line. Keep it in mind. And then deliver the head of the face of the club into that line. You'll look up in the air and then your eyes come back to where you are. And then just turn away from the ball and let it happen. So what he did was he went out in the golf course the next time he played, and he made 4 birdies. And so he almost broke 80 and shot 79. But that's all I said was put the ball in your mind at the destination point where you want it, locate the apex, and then hit it. Don't think about it. Just go ahead and do it. You start trying to figure out why that works. And I said, don't think about it. Just do what you did. Put the ball at the destination point, look up in the air, find the apex, and hit the ball. Don't start trying to figure out why it works, or you'll be there for quite a while. What's going on is intriguing. It has to do with creating an image of something that you wish to have materialized, to manifest. Looking into what you do with your own life and what others listening to you do. Mentally, it's the same thing. The energy is always there. But when you create an image of what it is that you wish to manifest, it can be a circumstance in your existence, in your career, something that's precise in your mind. The energy is always there. When you create the intent, this is what I want to see manifest, and you let it happen. You can't force it, but you keep that energy alive. And it's interesting how it manifests. And you said you had an enlightening experience at some point. I've had something like that happen to me more than once.
About the first time?
The first thing would have been the grand mal epileptic seizure that I had when I was probably 21 or 22 years old. What flowed out of that experience was during it. I saw one of the reasons why discussions about epileptic seizures wander off into mysticism. What I experienced was this. It was like there was a ball of energy in my body, and it went into my mind. I saw virtually everything that ever occurred in my life up to that point and more, a lot more. The mind is a very big place, extremely big. Well, one of the things that happened out of that was I started taking medication. That was a mistake. I never should have done that. Now I know that. My brothers had the same experience. He and I have discussed this about the medication. It stops the seizures. That isn't all it stops. It stops direct participation in life. Then several years later, I was 30 years old, living in a little coach house in Toronto, Ontario. I was playing the piano, and I had read all of Carlos Castaneda's books. Do you know who he is? If you look up Carlos Castaneda, he wrote books about his experience with what were termed in his books and were sorcerers who lived in northern Mexico. 3 individuals, Don Juan Matus, Don Guerrero, and Don Vicente. These individuals had a philosophy of life that they imparted him to Castaneda. So he wrote books about it. I got very deeply involved in that. And because of what had transpired during this epileptic seizure, I had access to energy that I didn't have before. And I stopped taking the medication when I was 25 years old, and I told nobody about it. I was living in Carmel, California. I was still a member of the Canadian Professional Golfers Association. I called the golf pro at Pebble Beach Golf Club, which is a famous golf club in California. It's really a good golf course, a unique place. I went out there as a guest of the golf pro, hitting golf balls, and I was still taking this medication, and I couldn't get connected to what I wanted to have happen. And this little voice in my head said, stop taking that medication and eat these foods. Most of the foods I ate anyhow. So I stopped taking the medication, and it took about 2 weeks, maybe even a little less. And I noticed that the mental, physical connection that needs to exist in order to make a golf swing and have the ball go where you want it to started to come back to me. It was long after that I got really good at it. And it was 5 years after that, I was sitting playing the piano one day in this little coach house, thinking about what was in Carlos Castaneda's books. And I hit a chord on the piano. I was thinking about what we're talking about here and about some of the things in these books of Castaneda's that elevate your
Vibration.
existence. Well, those 3 individuals that I mentioned that are mentioned in Castaneda's books were able to leave their bodies and go to other places, come back. It was like a form of lucid dreaming that's advanced to the point where your physicality can move without being an ascended being. I was thinking about this, and I thought, I wonder if that's why I had epilepsy. I hit this chord on the piano, and a bolt of energy went through the top of my head to the base of my spine that knocked me off the piano bench onto the floor. I got up, and that energy stayed in my body, and it went into my mind. I was told out of that experience, mentally, I was told, in 50 years, a lot will reveal itself to you about how to use this energy. This is now 50 years later, almost to the moment. The changes in what's going on are, I'm watching, cognizant of what I've just told you. 50 years goes by. It sounds like a lot of time, and in some respects it is. So when I go and play the piano, now I have a piano in this cottage. I'm on a lake in southern Ontario, and a beautiful place called Stony Lake. And I play the piano. I've got a guitar here. A couple of years ago, I wrote a song called Hey America, and it's on YouTube. And it's in the audiobook of my book publication. Title is Mind Golf, The Troubled Genius of Mo Norman. My brother Neil wrote a foreword in it. He reads it. My friend Barry Morrow wrote a foreword, and he reads his foreword. And Barry wrote the screenplay for the hit international film Rain Man and won an Oscar for it. He's a very accomplished writer. I read the text in the book. So the audiobook has the songs in there. One thing that Mo Norman pointed out about playing golf and striking golf balls is he would always say the mechanics of it are so simple. The best players in the world, including Tiger Woods and Nick Faldo and Paul Azinger and a whole raft of others, they watch Mo and they say, how does he do that? And Mo would say, watch, and he'd hit it again and it'd go where it's supposed to. And he'd say, it's so simple. But to get it, he didn't know what to say. And he'd hit it again and it'd go where it's supposed to. I watched these guys watch him, and I thought I watch it all the time. I had a little deeper insight than they did. He also said, it's like music. It's simple, and it's like music. When I was writing this book, I pay attention to what's going on. I watched the major newscast a few years ago. I watched Donald Trump travel down the trail to the White House and just naturally watched the news, and I could see what he was doing. And I thought, this headed in a very strange direction. That was my take on it. I thought, I wonder where this is going to take the United States. And I wrote this, and I thought, I've never written a song before, but I had a guitar. I was in Florida. And I had 2 or 3 lines came to my mind. And when I went back to where I was living on the beach, I picked up the guitar and discovered I could play the chords, the melody line, the beat, the thing. Mm-hmm. And it just expanded from there and became this song called Hey America. The lyric, when I wrote it, was relevant then. Now, in my view, it's even more relevant. But it's on YouTube. I recorded the song here in Ontario. I went into a friend's studio, and then I gave copies of it to some musician friends of mine around here. Then we got together and recorded it. We did it in 3 or 4 takes. I'm playing the guitar and singing the song. Then my brother showed up from California, and my sister-in-law, Daryl, who's a very well-known actress, Daryl Hannah. So Neil played a harmonica intro in the song and sang a vocal harmony with a couple of the other people in the band. And the video guy, Adam Volek, was out on the road when Neil tours. He came up and he filmed it. We got a professional situation here and edited the video. So now there's a video that's on YouTube. The record company, Neil's company, Warner Reprise, is a label. They put their publicity people put out a little blurb that said, Neil Young's 78-year-old brother releases first song. This goes on the entertainment wire everywhere, North America, Europe, Australia. So all these people out there who are my brother's audience, they look at that, they probably say, A, we didn't know he had a brother. B, we know he had a brother, but what is it? What a wonderful song. So out of curiosity, they would then listen to it. And it went on Neil Young Archives. And then either the same day or the next day, it went on Rolling Stone's front page website and then onto YouTube in the space of about a day or two. And within a couple of weeks, 40 or 50,000 people had actually looked at this thing or listened to it. And the last time I looked, it was something like 130 or 40,000 people. But I always thought a lot of this is curiosity of people who are my brother's audience saying, what's this about? And he's playing the harmonica in the thing as an artistic oddity. It caught their attention. But the song is actually good. A lot of people like it.
Yeah. I would imagine so. If you're creating something and already thinking of the future, what is the outcome that you're trying to, do you think you accomplished that?
With that song, it got recorded and I had never done it before.
So it's just like an experiment expression.
You'd have to listen to the song, listen to the lyric, and you'll know why I wrote it. The creative spark that ignites the action that manifests.
Okay. That's where I was trying to go.
That's what you're doing. At least that's the way I perceive it. Now I've got 7 read songs, but I didn't set out to be a singer-songwriter.
Right.
However, it's an interesting exercise. It's very creative, and I like writing. For some reason, it comes to me easily. I'm not a great musician, although the piano comes to me easily too. I don't know about it, but I can play the thing anyhow.
You grew up in Canada.
Yes.
First of all, I grew up in upstate New York and I have to have real maple syrup. Are you the same? Like, that's just a side question.
We have real maple syrup right here. If you can see these trees behind me,
Yes.
there's around here. We have real maple syrup every year.
Do you
And,
boil it and do the whole thing?
well, you take the sap and you just heat it, boil until you
Yeah.
get it to the right consistency.
You do that? That's
Oh, yeah.
amazing. I'm
I
so
used to do
jealous.
it when I was a kid.
Oh, I love it.
It's excellent.
So tell me about your parents. Your dad was a writer
Yes.
and he was in the newspaper, like he wrote tons of things. What was it like growing up with him? How did they raise you?
Well, eventually, our parents were separated when I was about 17, and Neil was maybe 13 and a half. And I started playing golf when I was about 12. We lived across the street from a golf course. My father did the televised intermission interviews on Hockey Night in Canada. That was a national Canadian Broadcasting Corporation broadcast. Everybody watched the hockey games. And so he was a sports columnist at a national newspaper, the Globe and Mail. And then he started doing these interviews. So he became nationally known immediately. I was in high school and hockey was big. I was playing golf. I was one of the best amateur players in the province when I was a teenager. I was a captain of a hockey team that got to the provincial finals. So I was hep to the world of sports. And when I went to the hockey games, I had access to the Toronto Maple Leaf hockey team dressing room, the place where the broadcast people broadcast a radio thing on a beam at the top of the building. It was dangerous getting to that place, Foster. I remember it. So that was normal for me as a kid. I had access simply because of my family. I knew people that a lot of them eventually became very well known. One of them was a comedy team, Wayne and Shoot. Johnny Wayne and his wife, Bee Wayne, were friends of my parents. Their seats in Maple Leaf Gardens for the hockey games were right in front of me. Lauren Michelson, who became Second City. All those people I met when I was a kid. In Second City, they rehearsed in Toronto down an alley from a place I had an apartment. So I used to see them all the time. And before anybody ever heard of them, actually. I don't know why. I seem to know a lot of people that are doing interesting things.
So do you think that shaped you into doing more?
The book that I'm writing or wrote has caused certain other things like this website. My website, bobyounggolf.com, has got the book, the audiobook. I wouldn't be surprised if the song that's in the audiobook is on the website. Some of the network people should play that song. It would make sense right now. There's the last verse in it. I got to pick up my guitar and make sure I can play this song again in case somebody asks me to. But the last verse in it says, "Hey, America, let no one steal your power. Say they're smarter than the founding fathers. Let the stars and stripes fly free. Show the world why you came to be the USA, the USA, the USA." And then there's more after that, but that's in there. And when I look at what's going on in the United States right now, it comes to my mind. That song needs another shot in the arm. Get out there. A few people singing it. My brother and sister-in-law showed up yesterday, Sunday evening after Farm Aid. It was in Indianapolis or near there. They drove up here afterwards. I'm there with my brother tonight. I'm going to buy the record company, get that "Hey America" back on the front page because it's needed.
Oh, that's about to ramp up. I'm not looking forward to that.
I don't know. Writing the book is one thing.
Mhm.
I can write another book about golf, but it'll be about energy and how you organize your own mental energy to
Yeah.
cause what you want to have come to be within your own existence. There's not, in my view, there's if there's no difference between that and the mechanics of causing a golf ball to go to where you want it to go. It doesn't matter what it is. There's no shortage of energy. Look around. The whole planet is a ball of energy, and the sun is another one. It's all part of the same thing.
I look at it as a frequency of the energy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very powerful. So
That's an interesting comment. Frequency, you feel it. Think of it that way. Everybody has feeling. That feeling is electrical energy. Everybody feels a fluctuation. I'm aware that it comes from one source. In certain writings, it refers to it as the one power, the one presence. The human race refers to it as God, but it's the same thing they're referring to. Somewhere at the center of the existence of the universe, there's a center point from which emanates the energy that causes it to be and sustains it, the design of the universe, and caused it to manifest and also sustains it. There's an eternal radiation of energy, 360 degrees in phase from the center of the universe. Say it's the God center. Find a name that you like and use that. The one power, the one presence just says the same thing to me. I find a reference to the sacred fire heart flame of the divine being of conscious living light that is the love star. I like that because it's that power within which everything that exists was conceived of, made manifest, and is sustained. That's what I think. When I think that way, I was created that way. So were you. So was everybody else. When I think about that center of power and then the creation of an individual soul, there's an obviously energy created, the fact that you exist and that I exist. You think of it that way, you'll start to feel it because you feel something anyhow. That energy is flowing through the existence of my soul into my brain structure, into my being. And it goes to my nervous system. And it's coming through my spine to my nervous system also, and to all points of light in my cellular structure. When I say that to myself, I feel it.
Yeah.
Didn't used to feel it, but I do now.
Yeah.
When I set myself up and then play the piano, the energy is different.
Yeah.
And I use it also in the creation of what I want to have manifest. So I can apply it to creating the image of the shot to be, the feel that I want in playing something on the piano. If I were a painter, I'd see the image and then I just let it happen.
So in your book, you explain it.
I don't think it's quite as succinct as I just said it in the book. And the next book that I write, I'm going to call it Cosmic Golf,
Nice.
the Zone and the Golden Stroke.
Oh, I love that.
Zone is a phrase used by competitive players in upper echelon of competitive professional golf and other places. When they get in the zone, as they call it, everything goes well. When the zone disappears, they don't know where it went, and they also don't know where it came from. What I just said is a way to access it. So I would set my mind up like that, like I just described them a couple of minutes ago, and then mentally tune with the center of this planet so that I have and when I do that, I have a sense of the energy that is this planet. And that includes the obvious connection of energy between the sun and this planet and every other planet in our solar system. The Earth revolves around the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a connection from the sun to what created it, which goes back around to what I was talking about with the one power, the one presence. So in my mind, there is an eternal circuit, the circuitry of the spiritual design, and I'm part of it. It's within me and I am within it, as are you.
Right.
And everybody else.
I've experienced it a little in the 2 near-death scenarios that I've had. I explain it as you can't touch a thought, but they're there. It still exists. That's how I envision our energy and our soul and the frequency of the universe. So it might be attached to this body.
It is.
Physical.
The frequency of my physical body, mental physical, it's because of what I'm doing and what I just mentioned, I'm raising the vibration. It's attached to what I did 50 years ago. It's advanced from it. 50 years ago, the energy was amazing. It's more powerful in my moment comprehension than it is now, except that now I have a clear grasp of the source of that power. So it is growing. And when I think of it, the light gets brighter. My own perception of my own physical body is brightening because I see it as an electrical structure called the electronic body. In my mind, the electronic body, I have feeling awareness.
Yeah.
It gives me universal presence. I see the whole thing. The image gets brighter. The more I go back to the source and set up the circuitry of the spiritual design in my mind, the stronger the light gets. I've noticed that in the last few weeks. It's a
That
very interesting experience. My friends who don't know anything about it, they don't see anything different when they look at me, but I don't feel the same way. I'm thinking out loud here, but it has occurred to me that I'm not separating myself from the human incarnate race, but my view of what's going on is definitely separate.
I can understand that.
Because I look at what's going on and I realize that it's headed in a direction that is significant. And this has nothing to do with golf, but it has a lot to do with energy and life. You look at the historical record on this planet. Atlantis existed at some point, and there were other places that existed. If anybody understands precisely what happened that caused Atlantis to disappear, they've managed to keep it a secret. Something transpired. The planetary population went through a transition, and that transition obviously involved the planet itself.
Yep.
Maybe a big step for people to accept the idea that the planet is actually alive. But when you think about it, it supports the life that you have, that I have, and that everybody else has, who's a creation of the will of whatever created it, us. Planet's part of that, and it supports our existence. Turn the sun off, this place is finished.
Right.
That's correct. We hope the sun continues to shine. That's what I was driving at. I wouldn't be surprised at all if there is a remarkable alteration on this planet at some point, because I see turmoil. There's a new brand of it turn the news on every morning.
You got to stop watching the news first. They only report the bad. You got to stop watching the news. They only report what's going to be clickable.
A couple weeks ago, the signal on my television went out here. I haven't even had it turned back on. I thought I'll just leave the thing off.
Can you tell me a little more about Mo and your relationship?
He grew up in a city called Kitchener, Ontario. And when he was a child, 5 or 6 years old, he was in a car accident. He was tobogganing down a hill in the winter and went out on the road and a car banged him on the head. And it had an effect on his life. That's obvious. His family wasn't wealthy. In the summers, he took up golf and he went to a local golf course and he hit golf balls and he just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And he figured it out, but he didn't know how to explain it. And then he played tournaments. He had no money. When he was a kid playing in amateur tournaments, he'd hitchhike to the golf courses and he'd sleep in the bush or in a sand trap on the golf courses. He was definitely an unusual individual, but he just kept doing it.
When did you meet him?
Initially, when I was playing amateur golf tournaments in Ontario in the late 1950s, I've forgotten when he became a Canadian amateur champion a couple of years in a row. And then he became a professional because they forced him out of the amateur ranks.
Were you close in age?
No, 11 or 12 years older than I am.
Okay, so
he died in 2001 or 2.
When you met, you were in your 20s, he was in his 30s probably?
I'd say I met him probably when I was 18, 19 years old. He would see me as somebody who was trying to play good golf. And then when I became a member of the Canadian PGA, it was at a golf course called Pine Valley in Woodbridge near Toronto. The golf head professional there, George Clifton, was a very hospitable individual, liked Mo Norman. Mo came by often, and I got to know him better there, and we played. I just grew out of that. In the winter, the contingent of Canadian golf pros that wanted to play competitive golf or just get out of the winter went to a place in Florida called Ormond Beach on the north side of Daytona Beach. They're called Tomoka Oaks. We congregated at Tomoka Oaks. Mo was there. Me, all the people who like to play competitive golf went there. But the owner of the golf course gave us a great deal. $1 a day was all we had to pay to play the golf course and use the practice your way. One winter I was there. We had that deal at the golf course, and then 3 of us rented this huge trailer at a trailer park. It cost about $100 a month. So for $2 a day, we had golf and accommodation. We ate at various places around Daytona. Mac's Famous Bar, which was the race car driver's headquarters in the early 60s. And you could get a draft beer for about 15 or 20 cents and a monster corned beef sandwich for about $1. So we had the economic factor figured out down to maybe $5 a day if it was that much.
How did you make money during this time to do all
I
this?
made money one fall. I worked on a Coca-Cola truck
Mm,
in Toronto, and then at Christmas, I left and went to Florida. So I could make money there.
yeah.
Went there one winter with $350 or $400, and I was there it was probably the end of April before I came back to Ontario.
What a different time, right?
Yeah, that much money now, you might be able to afford the gasoline to get there and have one or two meals, and you'd be out of money.
I don't even know if you could get there with that.
You're
Well,
right. I don't either.
that's amazing. So what was it about Mo that you wanted to dedicate the book to him? Did he inspire you to write it?
And I was cognizant of what he did and how he did it. But I also knew that other people weren't. Still aren't.
So did you,
Gradually, there are sections of this book that really good players will read, and they'll get a glimmer, and maybe more than a glimmer. And it wouldn't surprise me if some of them try to contact me at some point
Mhm.
and discuss it further. I'd have to see them personally and watch what they're doing and talk to them to get some idea of what kind of a person you're dealing with
Right.
and be able to do something to assist them in what they're trying to accomplish. But it's very simple.
Hmm.
The physical motion of golf swing, which is what everybody's trying to figure out, is based on centrifugal force. It's a revolving action constituted of wind up and release. Attack the golf ball. It's a motion that has an orbit. A lot of stuff written about how you hit a golf ball. I look at it and I thought, I'm glad I don't ever think of it that way, because what all it would do is confuse people. People are trying to discuss how to improve at something that's fascinated them all their lives, which is really what I'm doing. I'm
Yeah.
putting myself above them. I hit all those balls with Mo Norman, and I know how good he was and how good I got. It got interrupted, but nevertheless, it was an interesting experience that I wanted to make a written record of, so I wrote this book. Now, in the next book I write, I'll get into the aspect that has to do with energy, where it comes from, and why the actual physical motion of a golf swing can be seen as simple. A lot of things that are great are simple.
Yeah. Doesn't necessarily equal easy. Simple doesn't mean easy. So how long did you play? You were an amateur and then you were a pro. How long was your career as a golfer?
I was in the Canadian PGA until sometime in the late 1980s. And so 25, 27 years, somewhere in there.
Contact them and have a book signing there. That would be smart.
The publicist that contacted
Yeah.
you, your company, she's brought up that too. And I think at a certain point, I'll start doing that. My guess is over this coming winter,
Hmm.
when I'm in the States. There is a website called gravesgolfacademy.com that is dedicated to Mo Norman, created by Todd Graves. I know. And we are going to meet in Florida, probably around Orlando. I'm not sure of the dates yet. He'll have a film crew there. We'll do some stuff. He has clinics here and there around the United States.
Yeah.
We'll check that stuff. It'll go on his website. It'll probably go on my website too. There's one thing about writing a book. There's the writing the book, and then there's marketing the book. The
There's a whole
writing, from
business.
my perspective, is coming from my mind.
Right.
Rest of it involves conversations like this.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you just keep doing it, and that's fun. I talk to people that wouldn't otherwise know, and it just adds up. And the objective here is let it infiltrate the broadcast industry. And when you talk about professional golf, the broadcast industry is huge in professional golf.
Mm.
You can't get away from golf broadcasts. They're there all over the place. There's a golf channel, then major networks are shooting tournaments and so on. And the game itself has permeated every profession that exists. There are people playing golf in it. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter what it is, from the president of the United States to some guy driving a milk truck in Boise, Idaho. They're all in the golf course. How do you hit the ball? They have the same question. How do you make the ball?
I started my son at 5 years old into golf. So
Well, good. It's a
because
good
I knew that the golf course is where deals happen.
one of them. That's true. There's a lot of communication out there, and it's good for you to walk around. You know what? This pandemic, this COVID
Yeah.
situation, it fostered a huge expansion in the number of people playing golf. They're out in the field walking around. They're not in an enclosed space like an office building or a concert hall or something like that. All of the restrictions about congregating didn't apply because they're in an open field or the wind's blowing. Well, went to the golf course and they're still there. I've got a friend who owns a golf course about half an hour from where I am, and his membership has expanded. The casual pay as you play has expanded, and the people are still playing.
Yeah. My husband, he was in South Korea for a year without us. So they played golf. That was their way to get out of the barracks, was to do that. So I can definitely see. And then he caught the bug. He said he's not very good at it. But I will definitely be getting your book and making sure we read it together.
To get the audiobook.
Oh yeah, I love audiobooks.
The audiobook is, as I said, I'll say this again. You go on my website, bobyounggolf.com. Printed book is there. The audiobook is there. And the audiobook is alive. When I was a kid, I read everything. I read novels. I read the stuff my father wrote. But if there'd been audiobooks, I would have listened to them, but there weren't. There's lots of golf courses everywhere you go, especially in the southern United States, Florida.
Oh yeah, we're next to Pinehurst and all of that. Like they're pretty famous golf courses.
Oh yeah, that's big golf, huge golf world.
Yep.
All that whole area. I've gone back and forth through there off and on all my life. It's a really attractive part of the country. I spent a lot of time in the United States, really a lot. I even went to school in Florida when I was in grade 5 and grade 7.
Oh, no way.
With my brother, the local school in New Smyrna Beach. There's a little picture of my brother in grade 2 or whatever it was. Yeah, Neil Young went to school here.
Why? What led to Florida when you were little?
My father was a freelance writer.
Okay.
He became a freelance writer. So here we are in this little town about 30 miles from where I am right now called Omemee, Memee. It's an Indian word. I think it means wild pigeon or something like that. Mm-hmm. We went, some family friends had been there, told them about it. So right after Christmas, we got in the car and went to New Smyrna Beach. And that was 1951. And then again in 1953, we lived right on the dunes on the ocean on Hill Street. And it was beautiful old cottage. It was $100 a month.
Nice.
Now it's probably about $5,000 a month, that or whatever, but a lot. And I go there still.
Yeah.
I'm not at that particular cottage, but my mother lived there for 25 years after my parents were divorced. Okay. And but I've gone back and forth to Florida since I was 9 years old. Mm-hmm. And so now it's something, whatever it is, 72 or 73 years later. I still have friends there.
You have deep roots in the United States and Canada. And what a stark difference in climate for sure.
The winter here is the winter. And the winter in the United States is the same. It depends. Toronto, Ontario is on the same line as Northern California. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of people notice that, but I have, and it's a fact.
Well,
it's really, we got deep roots. My my sister-in-law's American, and my 2 nephews and my niece and Neil's children. Mm-hmm. They were born in the United States. On my mother's side of the family, her family came from her father from the Richmond, Virginia area.
Okay.
Ragland family. Okay. And they actually owned a huge plantation in the Richmond area. And my grandfather, my mother's father, went to Winnipeg, Manitoba from Richmond. Why, I have no idea. But he created a company called, I think, the Barrett Roofing Company, which was very successful. And one of his other daughters was married to a fellow in Corpus Christi, Texas. And she created a public relations company that handled all of Lyndon Johnson's affairs when he was a governor of Texas.
Wow.
And leading into his move into the White House when Jack Kennedy was assassinated. Mm-hmm. So I heard all of that stuff. I grew up with writers, but I heard all of that from my aunt.
Yeah, it's right next to you.
Handled his Lyndon Johnson's public relations when all of that was going on. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know why they were doing that or it's just another example of inadvertently being connected to people who are close to something that's going on.
Yeah.
Just before we started talking today, I got a text message. This is a good example of this from the individual who was running the campaign for wanted to be Prime Minister of Canada in the next federal election.
Oh.
I don't know. She's busy, is what she is. And the message is saying, "I'm not sure when I'm going to be around that area again. We got to get together." And I said, "I've been saying that for the last 6 months, but she's busy."
Yeah. Since even before you were born, you were already connected to prominent people or people that do amazing things. So I'm not shocked that you are one of them as well.
I'm not sure what I've accomplished that anybody knows about. I said to my brother recently, I said, "You know something? The fact is, I want to go to Florida for a couple of reasons. One, to get out of the winter, but that's a definite factor. The other thing is, I want to go out there and hit golf balls every day because I can see a little better now."
We're going to shift gears a little bit. Do you have 3 top tips for either mindset, golf, business? What would they be?
With golf, I did mention one of them, but I'll mention it again. The average golfer should go out there, look at the ball sitting on the ground or the tee if you're on the tee, and pick the exact location where you want it to be next. Look up in the air, and when you sense the place where the ball would begin its descent, wind up and swing the club. And don't start wondering whether it'll work or not. Just find the apex, you'll sense it. Your eyes come back along the line to the apex of where you're standing, and just turn away from the ball and swing the club and watch what starts to happen. That's why it works. You're not going to hit perfect shots all the time, but the ball will start going in the right direction as long as the grip is correct.
Yeah.
It has to be correct. Centrifugal force requires a correct grip where the face of the club doesn't stay square to the intended line, at any rate.
Well, that's like a tip too.
All it is, it's got to be in the palm across here so that the heel of your left hand, if you're a right-handed player, is the grip of the club is in here, in there, last 2 or 3 fingers. So it's in there, and you should pick it up. If you try it, you'll sense you got it in the right place. At any rate, there's that. And with regard to golf, you can do that. I think reading, to get online and find Saint Germain Press or Saint Germain Publishing, is Germain. And there's a series of 18 books in there. I have 2 of them here at this cabin. One is called The Magic Presence, which is about energy flowing through your body, is what it is. And the way it's described, and it's a very interesting book. And you should read it, given what we've been talking about, what you've been saying you're doing about frequencies. You'd find this book intriguing. You'd learn something from it.
Oh, yeah.
Another book that's in that series is called the I Am Discourses. The I Am Discourses are a series of chapters, 2 sections in each chapter, that emanate from the 7 mighty Elohim of creation. And you would find, reading these books, you'd find out who the 7 mighty Elohim of creation are and how they are connected to every individual that exists. Not that most people know that, but you would figure that out from reading these books because it's not confusing. The Elohim of creation are definitely connected to the power that created this place initially. And it's intriguing reading the words that they have to say. And it's not hard to follow it. It's just, I think that reading either of those 2 books or both of them would be something that I've had those books for 40 years. So I refer to them, but it's worth the effort. And a third thing, I think the clear image of what it is that you want in your life. Gather that together and then don't force it, but keep it there and let the energy accumulate that supports it. And it will start to show you how it manifests. It's an interesting exercise. I'm doing this myself, and I've done it before, and I'm watching what's going on. I know what I want. The perfect example is this book we're talking about, Mind Golf, The Troubled Genius of Mo Norman. That book projected into the golf world, the broadcast industry, just gradually. I see that in my mind. This discussion's part of a component of that effort, and it adds to it, as do the other interviews I do. And it just gathers momentum And by itself, it will rise to the surface, and it will be seen by the individuals that I perceive will probably benefit from it. So I just keep doing it, keep doing the interviews. But the point is, the mechanics of how the attention is drawn to what's in that book that's useful to people who are in the golf world, how that comes about is what I'm talking about. So I have the intent to help create that situation, and I just feed it when I have the opportunity, which is what this discussion is.
It's quite a benefit to talk to you. So I'm thankful that you're here.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
We are going to play a game real fast, just 10 rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I guess so. I might even have an answer. Who knows?
Okay. Bonus. Okay. The first one is, what was your first job?
First job would be working at a golf course.
Oh, nice.
Never did anything else. I didn't even deliver newspapers. Neil delivered the newspapers. He was the paper boy in the family.
Yeah. What did you do at the golf course?
I was an assistant golf pro.
Nice.
Yeah.
That was your first job?
Basically, yes. Yeah, I was in school. I
Okay.
played hockey and I played golf. And did I do anything else? No, it was golf.
Nice. And this is a funny question. What has been your favorite fashion trend ever?
Fashion trend. I like really well-made clothes that are made out of. So my mother said to me, take me in a clothing store. I will look around the place, and what my gaze fixes on will be the most expensive thing in the place. It would be pure cashmere. I did that. I still do it.
Yeah. You have the sense of the most quality and the most expensive thing. Same.
Now I was in one of those Goodwill places.
Uh-huh.
There's one in Canada, I forgot what it's called, Talese or something, but they buy stuff from estate sales and then hooked into charities and so. I go in there, I bought a full-length cashmere coat for $12.
That's amazing.
Now I've got two of them. The other one cost me a little less than that, minus a discount because of my age. So for I've got about $2,000 or $3,000 worth of cashmere coats. I hardly ever shop. I like really good shoes. And because if you play golf, you walk a lot, the shoes have got to fit properly. So they can cost a lot of money, good shoes. They do. I just did fashion. I don't know. Did you ever see the show Miami Vice?
Yes.
Okay. Is it Don Johnson?
Don Johnson.
I met him before Miami Vice became what it became.
Uh-huh.
At a concert in Gainesville, Florida, the Eagles were playing it. And the Eagles had opened on a tour my brother did called the Tonight's the Night Tour. So I phoned Glenn Fry, now deceased, who was in the Eagles. I said, Glenn, I'm in Florida. I'm coming over there with my friend Diane Marshall to see your show. So we went over. He said, good, we'll meet it for dinner. Don Johnson was there. And I didn't know his name at the time, and Jimmy Buffett and Joe Walsh and somebody else from the Eagles that I did know. So we're sitting there, and I had a pair of shoes on, leather shoes, with no laces and no socks, and a pair of jeans, a T-shirt that said Full Sail Studio, bright yellow and whatever white, and a velour sports jacket, dark green. I got the jacket on, the T-shirt, the shoes with no laces and so on. A couple of years later, my friend Diane and I were somewhere in Florida, and Miami Vice came on, and I was looking at it, and I said, is that guy that we had dinner with in Gainesville with Glenn Fry? And she said, yeah. And I said, he's dressed like I was dressed when we had dinner. She said, that's right. He stole your fashion move. And I said, I wasn't trying to do anything. I just didn't have any socks or something, so I didn't wear them. But that happened. Anyhow.
I love it.
Try that one time. I said, tell Johnson he owes me a 1% override on his money from that show for stealing my fashion. I never got a cent.
So you were a fashion trend. You started a fashion trend.
I like nice clothes, and I got that from my father. My father always looked good.
Yeah.
Women followed him every place. It didn't matter if they were how far away, but they were within reach. I didn't know at the time. Eventually, I realized that's what was happening. But he was a good-looking guy.
I believe it.
Later.
So what is your biggest pet peeve?
Yeah, some of the political stuff.
Right.
But,
I'm sure there's a lot in there.
I think that personally, I think that the judicial process here in Canada and in the United States needs a bright light shone on it.
Mm,
What's going on in the Supreme Court of the United States right now has created a lot of criticism that looks valid. There's something wrong with it, and it's interesting and it's important. But
yeah.
I look at that. I
Yeah.
mean, if there's other stuff, the price of gasoline is too high. The price of food is too high.
Yeah.
The cost of I take a Canadian dollar and turn it into a US dollar right now, it's about 72, and I looked at it earlier, 48 cents or something like that. So 22 and a half cents disappears into thin air.
Isn't that crazy?
However, it costs less, even with the exchange rate, to be in the United States and buy food and
Wow.
and live there. Many people know that, but it's a fact.
Interesting.
Looking at the cost of being in Florida in the winter or the southern United States somewhere, it definitely is a better situation than the one here.
I believe it. Just
Yeah.
because in the United States, the further north you go, it's more expensive. So I would
Yeah.
imagine it just keeps going into Canada, even though it's a different structure. What is one thing you want to do this year?
Here, my next objective is to one of them is to get out of Canada and to help my friend Carrie Alice Williams with her musical career. She's a brilliant singer-songwriter,
Mm,
keyboard player. She's opened 3 or 4 shows, soft seat theater shows in concert halls for my brother. She's really good. She's coming up here next week, and she will meet all the people in the music world that I know. They know of her. I don't know what'll happen. She's liable to wind up playing with them. That's fine. But I want to get out of the country and go away for the winter. That's my focus for
Snowbird is what we
and get my next book. I'll write the whole thing and then let it sit there for a couple of months and then reread it and tweak it a little here and there, and that'll be it.
I love that. What are 3 things on your bucket list?
The bucket list. There's a term I never bought into the stories about aging when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I still don't. I never gave it any credence. And now I never gave it any credence. Now I give it none.
Okay.
I don't even think about it. The bucket list, I'd like to have a nice peaceful place in the country. I have one in mind. It's about 100 acres of land. It's an area I'm familiar with. That would be the place to live. The place is a launching pad for other stuff that I want to do. Write more books. I have the book I mentioned to you that I'm promoting now. And then a second book that'll be golf related and energy.
Mhm.
Beyond that, I have a variety of things that have been suggested to me, but I'm going to write about unidentified aerial phenomena.
Okay. Love
I
that.
don't whatever happened to the term UFO.
Right.
I don't like that one anymore. We'll call them something else as though it is anything else. Unidentified aerial phenomena. So we'll call the story we've been telling you for the last 100 years or 80 years or whatever it's been. The government has been lying about it for so long, they almost
Right.
have given up on trying to say anything else, so we'll call it something else.
A rebranding.
Unidentified aerial phenomena. Nonsense. When I was a kid, 9 or 10 years old, I saw one of those things in an open field, not
Mm,
far from where I am right now, and I never said a word about it, but I
mm.
saw it in broad daylight in the
Wow.
fall of the year. Yep, and
Wow.
I mentioned it in a song that I've got. The song hasn't been recorded yet, but that the bucket list would include the discussion about that whole subject, which is what I've read stuff that other people have seen. And I'm sure there's a lot of remote areas on this planet.
Yeah.
The odd person probably sees something in them and doesn't say anything. That's what I did.
Mm,
But I was 9 years old, I think, 9 or 10. But I saw that thing in an open field and it
yeah.
stopped right in front of me, no more than 100 yards away if it was that far. And then it flew away in my line of vision and stopped. And I could see it because it was in my line of vision, but it moved really fast
Mm,
from where it was to, and then it stopped and went like that. And then it went to my right. It moved. I watched it, showed its speed, and it vanished. It's the traditional description, circular, with sort of steps in it. And there was a hum. I
mhm.
heard it and the hum increased. And then when it moved, it was basically silent. It moved so fast that whoever created that technology definitely is a lot more powerful than anything that the human race that I'm aware of has ever created. In my view, I saw that.
Yeah.
I know that they're there, here, rather.
Yeah.
They've probably been here for centuries.
And
They
probably.
have citizenship. Anyhow, there they are. And we're zooming around with missiles and atomic bombs and all this other stuff that they think gives them power. It's ludicrous. And there are these other characters with the technology, which could not only neutralize that probably pretty quickly, but hasn't. Who knows? There's a lot going on here, and in my view, there's
Oh,
invisible. And I want
yeah.
more about it.
Yep.
Briefly.
I love that. And when you do write any of those, I would love to
Yeah.
have you back and discuss
Yeah.
them. 'Cause
Yeah. Well,
I've got
yeah,
stories too.
fine.
I'd love to share. How many siblings do you have?
I have my brother Neil is a full brother. We have two sisters. One is actually technically a half sister. Astrid, her name is, accomplished musician, and another individual, Deirdre, who is a stepsister. There-
You're the oldest of your siblings?
I am the oldest. I'm 3.5 years older than Neil is.
Okay. And what is your favorite candy or snack?
Right now, I basically cut sweet food out of my diet. I never ate it much. And I was told by the spirit world, stop eating anything sweet, anything with sugar in it, and
Okay.
it will help your vision. So I did.
Oh,
I mentioned this, but I'll say this. The person who did this cover, can you see that?
lift it up a little bit.
The cover on my
There you
book,
go.
the
Uh-huh.
person who did that cover, I suggested the image. She
Nice.
was very accomplished trance medium. We knew trance mediums, she and I.
Before you stopped sweets, what was your favorite?
Probably some kind of ice cream that was well made. That
Yeah.
would be. I
That's
can't eat anything I didn't eat any desserts from the time I was 25 until probably about 20 years ago.
Do you
I
snack
didn't
on
eat
any?
peanuts. I would eat nuts and fruit, but not candy.
That is a snack. I was just wondering what you
Right.
like snack on when you want something to
Well,
munch.
variety of nuts,
Okay.
almonds, and stuff like that.
Oh,
That kind of and fruit.
nice. What is your zodiac sign?
Taurus,
Taurus? Okay. Is it in May or April?
April.
Nice.
April.
Okay. And what is your favorite thing about yourself?
Probably my never-ending curiosity.
Great quality.
What things about the way things function.
Yeah.
Life.
I would say that's one of my favorite things about you too. So, what is the best piece of advice you have ever gotten?
Yeah, to follow your own instincts with what you want to do in your own existence. And it takes people a long time to get to that if they ever get to it. And I don't mean find a job. My view of the world of time and money is that it needs to be done away with, forgotten.
Who shared that with you?
Probably the odd person here and there, but it's just something I've come to. I'm advising myself. That would be a good idea because the rest of it just doesn't. When I look at it right now, I say the same thing. The the concept of time has corralled the human population, and it's directly related to money, which is
Mm,
another bad idea. I think that at some point, the concept of time is a joke. There isn't any. It's a method the human race uses to measure things. But what? It isn't even accurate.
well,
What is it? Every 4 years, there's a leap year. So you
yeah,
add a day. 80
that's
years later,
strange.
I'm 81. So 80 years, 20 days have accumulated through
Mm,
leap.
yeah,
And people think that the seasons are moving back further into the year. They haven't changed at all. It's just our measurement method isn't accurate enough.
right,
The
right.
little things like that nobody even notices. And I don't dwell on it. What I want to do is what I said. I'm not, I want to live where I want to live, and I have a place in mind that I think will probably come to be. I'll write books about things that I'm intrigued by.
Awesome.
The whole UAP flying saucer thing intrigues me. It always has. And I think it's rising to the surface. So I'm going to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
I'll
Well,
pay
I
it.
can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, I'll pay attention to that and do the other things that I like doing. Play the piano and play golf, and that's it.
Okay. I have two final questions for you, and then we'll close out.
Okay.
Okay. The first one is a two-parter. Tell me what legacy means to you, and what role does it play in your life?
Legacy. The legacy that I would leave will probably be related to what I just said, what I write and what I write about. And what was the other thing?
It was what does legacy means to you, and what role does it play in your life?
I haven't thought about it much until recently, but it has actually come to my attention. that I think that what I write will create whatever legacy I leave. And man, some of the things that I do with relation to that will probably be part of it.
And then the last question is, how are you marking this time in your life?
How am I marking it? It's a transition from whatever has preceded my existence to this point to what I envision coming about. And the vision that I'm creating, we've discussed it a little bit here, and maybe a little more in a little more detail than I usually talk to anybody about it. However, that's it. I think this is a transition point, a good one. I like the prospect of doing what I've just said, of pursuing what I'm doing, writing and what's related to it. And I'll just keep going in that direction.
Awesome.
So it includes my involvement in golf, my involvement in writing, and the music, playing the musical instruments is an intriguing thought too. It seems to come pretty easily to me, but to have aspirations of creating a musical act that tours at this stage of the game is definitely, I don't know what to think about that. It's fine. I like playing the piano in the living room and singing my own songs to myself and the odd other person that shows up. But to do something with it, to do what my brother did, or even entertain an idea like that, I don't know. I just don't force it.
Yeah.
Just see what happens.
Technology is so different now that you technically don't have to tour. It's like you could just put it online and it lives there.
I see that. I like to go and watch people play. Bring
Oh,
back
yeah.
the folkies houses. I'd
That
like
would
to
be
see
fun.
people out there with their guitar and piano playing their own songs, devoid of all the technology except the speaker system in a little club somewhere or a big one. But
I believe you can make anything happen for sure. Like you definitely, once you dream it, you'll make it happen. I believe that about you. You're an amazing man and you are marking your life in this world. And I'm so glad to meet you. And thank you so much for sitting with me today and exploring deep thoughts and all of those things. I'm so appreciative of you being here with me today and sharing with everybody.
thank
Oh,
you. I enjoyed the conversation too.
awesome. So
We can
so
talk
much.
again sometime down the road.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to. I cannot wait for the other books to come down the road.
We'll stay in touch.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day.
Oh my goodness, what a crazy, deep, informative conversation I got to have with Bob Young. Thank you so much for listening. And if you want to follow him and get his books and see what he's up to, be sure to check out his website at bobyounggolf.com. He is truly a gem and has a ton of stories to tell. Again, thank you so much for listening.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Empowering Time Markers. We hope you found inspiration, gained valuable insights, and connected with our incredible guest. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us continue to bring you empowering content. And remember, the journey doesn't end here. Stay connected with us on social media, where we'll be sharing additional resources, behind-the-scenes content, and updates on upcoming episodes. Thank you for joining us on this empowering journey. Together, let's continue to make our mark on the world one moment at a time. Until then, keep empowering yourself and others. This is Tia Bottom, signing off from Empowering Time Markers.